Good morning. Today's daf is daf Yud Zayin in Masechet Menachot. Let me share my screen and we will get started. So, yesterday, we're sort of in the middle of discussing uh, situations where multiple items are required to cause something to be permitted. So, for example, when we bring the two loaves of bread on Shavuot, you have to slaughter both of the sheep that are being brought, the two sheep that are being brought with the two loaves, in order for those loaves to be permitted. And so when you have multiple items and you only have a piggle thought, so for example, again, with those two sheep, you have the thought, hey, I'm going to eat the loaves tomorrow. I'm not going to eat them today when I have to eat them. I'm going to eat them tomorrow. And so as a result, that is a piggle thought, a piggle intention that, but you only have it when you're slaughtering one of the two sheep. Well, then there is a debate in our Mishnah whether that results in piggle that is actually biblically prohibited and subject to the penalty of karet or not. So again, for example, as detailed in the Mishnah, if one had pigul intent, and then here's another example. The other example is a mincha offering, where you need, in order for the shirayim, the leftover mincha, that is after you take the komets, to be permitted to eat, you need to both burn the komets and burn the levona. So, as detailed in our Mishnah on Tes Zayin Amud Aleph, if one had bigul intention to eat the leftover mincha tomorrow, which is after the deadline, and you have that intention only while burning the komets, but not while burning the levona, or vice versa, you have it only while burning the levona and not while burning the komets, excuse me. So Rabbi Meir says the leftover mincha is pigul, because even having a pigul thought for part of the item that causes something to be permitted is sufficient to create pigul and is going to result in a penalty of kares if you then eat that leftover mincha. On the other hand, the Chachamim say it's not pigul. It's going to still be prohibited to offer. It's not a kosher sacrifice, but you're not going to have it. It's not going to be subject to kares until the pigul intent is had during both the burning of both the komets and the levona. You have to actually have the pigul thought not only when you're burning the komets, but also when you're burning the levona, because both of them are necessary to be able to eat the shirayim, the leftover of the mincha. And so as we pick up with the last word on Tet Zayin Amabet, so the Gemara introduces a variation on our Mishnah's case, and we're going to have two different opinions. We're going to analyze the first opinion before we get to the second opinion, and then we're going to have sort of a third opinion, which is going to be a combination. It's not really on the same topic. It's going to be a further adjustment of these two prior opinions, and we'll see exactly what I mean by that as we go forward. So, Amri. So, last word on Tet Zayin Amud Aleph. Excuse me, on Tet Zayin Amud Bet. Last word on Tet Zayin Amud Bet. Amri. So they said, who said, take a look at the top of Yud Zayin Amud Aleph, Charife de Pumbedisa, the sharp ones of Pumbedisa, and Rashi tells us that we saw in Sanhedrin that this is Apha and Avimi, the children of Rachava. So, Charife de Pumbedisa. So what did they say? Haktara mifagelas haktara. That when you have one burning, it can result in pigul in another burning. So what does that mean? So thankfully Rashi helps us out. So take a look at the Rashi, second line on Yud Zayin Amud Aleph. Hiktir komets al manas lahaktir levona la'achar zman. So if you have an intention while you're burning the komets to burn the levona after the deadline for burning it, which is that day, so then pigel. It's going to be pigel because even though usually we think, well, pigel involves some level of consumption, and even though either by you or by a an altar, and usually we say pigel only involves the item itself and not things that are cause other things to be permitted. And here the Levona is something that causes the shirayim of the mincha to be permitted. But what essentially the Charife de Pumpadisa are saying is that, listen, you had the pigel thought while you're burning the komets, and you had it regarding the Levona, so you've effectively incorporated pigel in connection with both of the elements that are the permitting things for the shirayim, and so as a result, we're going to consider that to be pigel. And Rashi continues, third line in Rashi, near the end of the line, va'afagav de'ein mater mifagel es mater. Even though in general we say that one permitting thing does not enable another permitting thing to be subject to pigel, even though that's the case. And the classic example of that is the two sheep that we slaughter on Shavuot, where if one were to say that they're slaughtering one today to eat from the other one lemachar, tomorrow, as we will see, as we are about to see, we're going to quote a Mishnah on that. Dahasam lo ikba'u b'chad mana. In that situation, the two sheep have not been combined in a single vessel, and therefore are not effectively tied together as a single sacrifice. Hacha ikba'u b'chad mana. But here, as we will see, the Levona, and as we know, the Levona and the Komets were already in a vessel together, because remember, all of the flour dough mixture was in one vessel, and we're going to take the komets out of that vessel, and on top of that mixture we had put the Levona, and then the Levona gets moved to the side, and then we engage in the kamitza, and we take the komets, and so as a result, that's going to be different than the sheep. And so while with the sheep we have the principle of ein matir mefagel et hamatir, that we don't have one permitter cause another permitter to be subject to pigel, when it comes to this komets and Levona, we will allow it. Va'afil rabbanan. And now back into the Gemara, second line of the Gemara. Even the rabbis who say ordinarily you need to have pigel thoughts in connection with all of the things that are permitting something else to be used. So that is true only hanimili hecha dechishev be shbishirayim ulavona b'milsa kaima. That's true when you're burning the komets and you're thinking about the shirayim, because the Levona stays in its regular kosher state, and so as a result, there's no problem with the Levona, and therefore we're not going to say that it's pigel, because the Levona has nothing wrong with it. And in order for a pigel to exist, there needs to be something wrong with all of the matir, all of the thing that is causing stuff to be permitted. And again, the Levona and the komets are both are each a matir, because you need to burn both the komets and the Levona in order for the shirayim to be permitted. Aval hacha.
Aren't they burned together?
Yes, they are burned together, but they don't have to necessarily. But they aren't necessarily burned together, meaning one can burn one without the other. So it's possible to do it. So
but if they burn them together, then
you wouldn't have a problem. Of course, everything would be hunky dory, so you would not have a problem. So then it wouldn't be possible to have, if you think, oh, I'm going to burn this sacrifice tomorrow, while you're burning it, that is, I don't think that's a piggle thought because you are burning it right now. And so as a result, you are clearly not burning it tomorrow. So as a result, that's not going to be piggle. And so similarly here, if you were to have the thought about the Lavona while you're burning both the comets and the Lavona, that's not going to be piggle either. It's you're thinking about something that cannot happen because you've already burned it. So aval hacha dechishev la belavona. But in our example that the Charife de Pumpadisa are telling us about, again, it's where you burn the comets alone and you have in mind to burn the Lavona the next day. Well, now you're thinking about the Lavona. It's as if you had a piggle thought when you're doing all of the actions because it's either about the action, it's either happening during the action that you're taking, namely the burning of the comets, or it's happening with respect to the other matir, which is the lavona. So every aspect of the matir is now problematic. And so therefore, the Charife de Pumbedisa say that in that situation, the shirayim will become pigel. And if you eat the shirayim, you will end up being subject to a kares.
But
Amar
they're two separate
Rava,
acts, right?
Rava suggests, hey, maybe we can show that we have a proof for this because we had a Mishnah on Yud Bet Amud Aleph, Af Ananami Tanina, Zeh Klal, Kol HaKometz V'nosim B'kli V'hamolech V'hamakdir Le'echol Davar Shedarko Le'echol Ulahakdir Davar Shedarko Lahakdir Chutzlim Komo Pasal Ve'ein Bo Karetz Chutzlis Mano Pago V'chayavin Alav Karetz. Right? We had the general rule that when you engage in any of the four steps, the taking of the comets, the putting the comets in the vessel, the taking of the comets in the vessel to the mizbeach, or the burning of the comets, and you do it with respect to eating something that is supposed to be eaten, or burning something that is supposed to be burning, and you think about it about chutzlim komo, you think about doing it outside its place. Again, that's not piggle. That therefore it's going to be puzzle and not subject to kares. But if you think about it outside its time, chutz lizmano, well then it's piggle and you're chayiv kares for it. So ma'ilav haktara dumya dahanach. So 1 second. What we said, all four cases, right? Taking the comets, the putting it in the vessel, the carrying it to the mizbeach, and the burning it. Well, let's think about the burning it. Well, let's talk about actually the first three steps. In the connection with the first three steps, there can be a burning that you're thinking about. You could be thinking about burning the comets that hasn't yet happened. But, and you could think about the burning of the Lavona, which hasn't yet happened. But when we talk about Haktara, Ma Hanach Bein La'echol Bein Lahaktir, when it comes to the first three, it's talking about whether you can have an example of piggle that's about eating, and you can have a piggle that's an example about burning. So Av Haktara Bein La'echol Bein Lahaktir. Shouldn't the last step of burning also involve a thought, a piggle, potential piggle thought, both about burning and about eating? After all, it didn't differentiate the lahaktir category from all the other categories. And so as a result, presumably when we say that you're in the middle of burning, that when you're doing the haktara, it's referring to doing the haktara on the comets and thinking about burning the lavona afterwards, or vice versa. It's about burning the lavona and thinking about burning the comets afterwards. And yet we see that in all of these, in this case, in this Mishnah, it's clearly going to be a piggle, because we said that you had the thought about after the time and it's considered piggle. So isn't this a proof that the Charife de Pumpadisa are correct? And so the Gemara says no. Lo, hanach bein le'echol bein lahakir. Yes, when it comes to the first three steps of taking the comets and putting it in a kli and bringing it to the mizbeach, well then you can have a piggle either through thinking about eating the remnants out, the shirayim outside the right time, or burning the lavona or the kometz itself outside the right time. But when it comes to burning, so then le'echol in, you can have a piggle thought with respect to eating because you haven't yet done the eating. But hakdir lo, but you can't have a piggle thought about burning anymore, even if your burning is just about the Lavona. We're not going to say because, again, based on the position of the rabbis, at least, that would be a piggle thought only with respect to partial matir, not with respect to all of the matir, and so as a result, it wouldn't be a pigul. So it wouldn't be pigul. So Yosef Rav Menachot Bar Gada Kameda Abaye. V'Yosef Ka'amar Mishmei de Rav Chisda. So now we're going to get a different opinion from the ones from the Charife de Pumbedisa, and we're going to have the opinion, the exact opposite opinion. And Rav Menachot was sitting in front of Abaye, and he said in the name of Rav Chisda, Ein haktara mifagelas haktara. Exactly the opposite of what the Charife de Pumbedisa said, that you cannot burn one kometz and affect pigul in the burning of the lavona. So having in mind that you're going to burn the lavona outside the right time does not create pigul. And you know what? And you know who would agree with this? Not only would the rabbis agree it, because of course the rabbis would say it's going to be it's not going to be pigul because you're only thinking pigul thoughts with respect to half of the matir or part of the matir. You're not thinking about the entire matir because you're not also having this pigul thought while burning the lavona. And so, but even Rebbe Meir would agree. And why? Because Hani Mili, where he says that even half of a permitter is going to create pigul, that's where you think about eating the remnants. And that's because you're eating the thing that is being permitted outside the right time. The kometz matir did who? Because the kometz is what permits the remnants. And so as a result, that's why thinking about eating the remnants outside the right time is going to result in pigul. Aval hacha. Here, you're not thinking about the shirayim. You're thinking about the lavona. The kometz lav mater de lavonahu. And the kometz does not permit the lavona. It's not as if the kometz is a necessary prerequisite to burning the lavona. You can burn the lavona before the kometz. Lo matzi mefagabe. And so as a result, the burning of the kometz and having that pigul thought is not going to create pigul in connection with the lavona. So Amrle Abaye, Anemare, Mishmei de Rav. Listen, tell me was this said in the name of Rav? So Amrle, yes, it was. In fact, it was said by Rav Chisda in the name of Rav. And Itmar Nami, in fact, we have a statement, Amar Rav Chisda, Amar Rav, Ein Haktara Mifagelas Haktara. You cannot burn a kometz and create pigul by thinking about the burning of the lavona. So Amar of Yaakov Bar Abba. So if you take a look at the Shita Makubetz, it changes Ed to Abba. Mishmei de Abaye. So it was said in the name of Abaye. Ava na nami tanina. You know what? Again, maybe we've got a proof of this fact. And so as a result, maybe we can show that in fact we've got a proof, and it's from our Mishnah. I'm sorry, no, it's not. This is from a Mishnah. It's from our Mishnah. Shachat echad min hakvasim le'echol mimenu lemachar. If you if you slaughter one lamb in order to eat the other lamb the next day, hu pigol v'chavero kasher. The lamb that you're thinking, having this pigol thought, is going to be pigul, but the other one is going to be I'm sorry, my apologies. Shakat eka min hakvasim le'echol mimenu lemachar. If you slaughter one of the lambs in order to eat that lamb the next day, so you're thinking about eating, and of course the slaughtering of that lamb is something that permits that lamb. Hu pigel, that lamb is going to be pigel, v'chaveiro, and the other one is going to be kasher, is going to be kosher, because it is a full permitter for itself, and it's not going to have any impact on the pair, on the second lamb that is brought with it, because it's considered a separate korban. However, if you think I'm going to not that I'm going to eat the other lamb tomorrow, shneim ksherim, they're both totally kosher. My time. Now, what's the reason? Because lav mishum dekeva de lav mater didei. Isn't it because the first lamb is not the thing that permits the second lamb? Lo matzi mafagabe, and so as a result, it can't create pigul. Isn't that the reason? And so isn't that the evidence that we're going to say that this is absolutely kosher? And isn't that exactly what Rav Menachot Bar Gada was saying that Rav Chisda said in the name of Rav? So isn't that a proof? Lo, no, not necessarily. Hasam hudalo ikva b'chad mana. There, they weren't combined into a single vessel. Meaning you didn't, even though you're going to supposed to take two lambs and two loaves for Shavuot, the two lambs are what permit us to eat the Kohanim to eat the two loaves. But each lamb is its own sacrifice and it permits itself, but they haven't been combined into one vessel to try and sort of connect those two animals. And so as a result, if you slaughter one and think about eating the other one after the right time, you haven't had a pigul thought, and therefore everything is fine. But when it comes to aval hacha, to ikva b'chad mana, here, when it comes to the mincha, where the levona and the mincha and the komets are all in the same vessel before the komets gets taken, then they are all considered one kichad damu. It's like one sacrifice, and therefore, maybe in that situation, in the situation of burning the komets and thinking about the levona, that's enough to be a problem. So the bottom line is that we've tried unsuccessfully to prove both of these different perspectives. Neither perspective has gotten a sufficient proof. So now we have Rav Hamnuna, and Rav Hamnuna is going to say something that is very similar, but sufficiently different that we're going to be confused by what he means, and then we'll clarify it, and it will all make sense. So, Amar Rav Hamnuna Hamilsa Avla Li Rabbi Chanina. This following was told to me by Rabbi Chanina, Utekila Li B'Kulei Talmudai, and it was so great to me. It was like my best thing ever. It was equal to everything else I ever learned. Hikter komets lahakter levona leechol shirayim lamachar. If you think while you're burning the komets that you're going to burn the levona, and you're going to eat the shirayim tomorrow. So now it's not exactly clear because there's no vav here. It's lahakter levona leechol shirayim. You're going to burn the levona to eat the shirayim tomorrow. So pigul. In that situation, it's pigul. Now, exactly what do we mean? So that's where the Gemara is going to ask right now. So my kamashmalan, what exactly is Rav Hamnuna telling us? If he's trying to tell us that when you do the burning of the komets, that if you think about the burning of the levona, doing the burning of the levona tomorrow, that's going to be pigul. So lema hiktir komets lahaktir levona. He should use the language that we saw already. That if you're burning the komets in order to burn the levona, so then that's fine. And you should say it that way. Meaning you don't. Why is he referencing the le'echol shirayim? And if he's trying to say that when you burn the komets and you think about the eating of the shirayim the next day, and you're telling us that it's just that burning the komets, that thinking the thought about the shirayim while you burn the komets is sufficient, and you don't have to also think the thought while you're burning the levona because you agree with Rebbe Meir. So lema hikter komets le'echol shirayim lemachar. Just say that you're thinking the thought that when you burn the komets and you're planning to eat the shirayim the next day, that's the situation of pickle. And eat tarvayu, and if you think that both of them are true, tarvayu kamashmalan, if you think that both of these laws are true, that you meaning that you paskin both like the Charifi de Pumpadisa and like Rebbe Meir, Lema hiktir komets lahaktir levona vile echol shirayim lamachar. Say that when you burn the komets, if you do so, whether it's to burn the levona to the next day or to eat the shirayim tomorrow, then it's going to be pigul. So you haven't said any of those. So what exactly do you mean? So Amarav Adabar Ava La'olam Kasavar Ein Haktar Mifagelas Haktar. Really, he does not agree with the Charife de Pumpadisa. He agrees with Rav Chisda in the name of Rav, and says that you can't burn the haktara, the komets, and have in mind to burn the lavona after the time and thereby create pigul. That doesn't work. And the ein mefaglim b'chatzi matir. And you cannot create pigul if you only have the thought about the eating with respect to when you're doing half of the actions that are necessary for that eating. So as a result, when you think to eat the shirayim tomorrow, only while you're doing the burning of the komets and not while you're doing the burning of the lavona, you have not created pigul. It's going to be prohibited, but it's not going to be pigul. So the shiny hacha, but here it's different. Because now that you have both, that you're thinking while you're burning the while you're burning the komets, you're thinking, I'm going to burn the lavona tomorrow, and I'm going to eat the shirayim tomorrow. So now the entire matir has a negative thought that's associated with it, and your thought relates to the item that is being permitted and not one of the permitters. And so as a result, that's going to be a situation that we are going to say is in fact pigul. And so as a result, if you do both, if you have a problem with all of them permitting, and you have a problem and you're thinking about the eating tomorrow, that's going to actually be pigul. So Tani Tana Kamei Rav Yitzchak Bar Abba. So we have now another brisa that appears to directly contradict our Mishnah, and we clarify what that brisa is all about.
So what was his final thought then, that he was burning the komets and thinking about eating the shrine and thinking about burning the
lavona tomorrow? Correct. If while you're burning the komets, you have both thoughts, both about the shirayim and about the burning of the lavona, the eating of the shirayim and the burning of the lavona, then it's going to be considered pigul, because even though we ordinarily say that there's no pigul through bechatzi hamatir, that there's no pigul when you have half of the permitter and you're only thinking about it during half of the permitter. Here, part of your thinking is about the other half of the permitter. And so as a result, the entire permitter is problematic. And you're also thinking not only about the permitter, but you're thinking about the permitted, the item that is being permitted, namely the shirayim. Therefore, we combine them all, and it is going to be pigul. So again, Tana Kamei Rav Yitzchak Bar Abba Hikter Komets Le'achol Shirayim L'Divrei Kol Pigul. That according to a brisa that was taught in front of Rav Yitzchak Bar Abba, that if you burn the komets in order to eat the remainder the next day, everybody's going to agree that it's going to be pigul. 1 second, Baham Miflag Pligi. That is explicitly the argument between Rebbe Meir and the Chachamim in our Mishnah. How could you possibly say that everybody says that it's pigul? Ela Emel Divrei Kol Pasul. No, what it should say is everybody agrees that it is not a valid sacrifice. Rebbe Meir would go so far as to call it pigul, but the rabbis would still say that it's invalid. V'lema harezeh pigul v'Rebbe Meir. Why are you rereading this brisa to say that it is pasul? Why not say it's pigul and it's Rebbe Meir? So no, Tana Divrei Kol Asniyua. If you learn about something that it's everybody, so then that's what you're going to learn. You're meaning that it's more easily to understood. Pigel, but puzzle michlafle. It's easy to confuse pigel and puzzle. Harezeh b'divrei akol lo michlafle. But if you're going to say that this is according to Rabbi Meir versus everybody agrees, well, then that's people don't get confused. Meaning, once you're saying everybody agrees, it most likely is supposed to be something that everybody agreed to. And the confusion between Pigel and Puzzle is much more likely than confusion between everybody agrees and something that is said by Rabbi Meir. So Hadron Alacha Komet says a mincha, Hadron Alacha Komet says a mincha, Hadron Alacha Komet says a mincha. Now we get to
So isn't it easier? Isn't it more easily understood? This is the opinion of the Rabbanim, and this is Rabbi Meir. Wouldn't that be the easiest way to understand it?
no. The brisa that we just quoted says everybody agrees that it's Pigel. That's not according to both Rabbi Meir and the
Correct,
rabbis.
correct. So then
So
just say then that Rabbi Meir says it's Pigo, and the others say it's not Pigo, it's Paso. Why isn't
no,
that
the
clear?
problem is that think how many extra words you're adding to this brisa if you make it say that. If you're making it say, you're not only are you changing it so that it's not saying divrei akol, but you're adding a whole additional concept of pasul, and you're adding rabbis, and you're adding Rabbi Meir. That's three different
I
changes that you're
understand that.
making.
So,
And
but if you
so the point is that what the answer that the Gemara says is when you can make one little change, you make the one little change, and the one little change that you're going to make is the one that's most likely. And switching pigel to psul is a very easy, small little change. Changing all that is a big change. Even changing it from divrei akol to just being Rebbe Meir, that's a much bigger change. And again, this is the concept of tradition, and we brought it down. And what are you most likely if I tell you that everybody says X, what's most likely for you to be confused about? The most likely thing for you to be confused about is to get confused about X, because it's very clear when you say everybody says. So that's the where the Gemara comes out, is that saying no, it's not the confusion about who says it. The confusion the mistake was about what was said.
so
All
so
right.
that it's so that but finally the easiest thing would just be to say everyone agrees it's Paso. Is that what?
Exactly.
Oh,
Because
okay,
you're not changing. You don't change. That everybody agrees isn't changing. All you're doing is changing the word piggle to
all
puzzle.
right,
Okay.
okay, fine.
All right. So Akomet says something. So now chapter 3. So we again continue with our different situations where a sacrifice is going to be invalid. If you do the komets of a mincha, le'echol davar she'ein darko le'echol. Right? We had said that the whole concept of piggle, etc., was where you are thinking to eat things that are supposed to be eaten or burn things that are supposed to be burned. So now, although maybe this should even go even in the second parak, we're now saying, what about if you do the opposite? If you eat things that are supposed to not be eaten and burn things that are not supposed to be burned. So le'echol davar she'ein darko le'echol, lahaktir davar she'ein darko lahaktir, kasher. It is a kosher sacrifice, right? It's not, even though you would think maybe it's a puzzle sacrifice, it's kosher because you're doing the wrong thing. And your thought is so outside the box that in fact we're going to say that it's kosher. Rabbi Eliezer, posel. Rabbi Eliezer says no, it's still puzzle. Le'echol davar shedarko le'echol, ulahaktir davar shedarko lahaktir. Pachos mikazayas. If you're thinking the right thoughts, but you're thinking just less than a kazayas, kasher, then it's going to be kosher. Lechol kachatzi zayas lahaktir kachatzi zayas. If you're thinking to eat a half a kazayas and to burn a half a kazayas, kosher, it's also going to be kosher. She'ein achilu lahvagtara mitzdarfim, because you don't burn human eating and burning on the altar. So Amar Rabbi Asi, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, my time at the Rabbi Eliezer. What is Rabbi Eliezer's logic? Amar Kra, Im ha'achol ye'achel mi b'sar zevach shlamav. We have a double language of eating in the verse, which is from this pasuk is Vayikra Perek Zayin pasuk Yudchet, and it says, and if some of the meat of his shlamim offering will be consumed, again with a double language, at all. And the puzzle continues on the third day. By Yom Shlishi, lo yeratzeh hamakrivoto, lo yechashev lo, pigul yehiyeh. It's going to be pigul. So as a result, b'shtei achilos hakastam medaber. It's two kinds of eating. Echad achilas adam, ve'echad achilas mizbech. This shows that there is that whether your thought is about the eating of a person or the eating of an altar, it's going to be pigul. Everybody is going to agree with that. Lomar lecha kashem shemachshavrin
What you mean
b'achilas
eating
adam.
by a person, not eating of a person?
But yes, by a person. Well, I could argue that. Okay, but in any event, yes, eating by a person, not that the person is getting eaten. Correct. So kashem shemachashvin ba'achilas adam, kach machashvin ba'achilas mizbeach. Again, just as when you're thinking about pigul, you have the problem if it's consumed by a person. Similarly, if it's consumed by the altar. And just as your intention with respect to the thinking of a person can be by the eating of a person, meaning the thinking of eating by a person is of what a person is supposed to eat. And the thinking with respect to the altar is of what the altar is supposed to eat. And this is where Rabbi Eliezer is now differing from the Tanakama. You know what? You can switch them because achila is being used by both the altar and a person. It shows that it doesn't make a difference whether you're thinking about the future eating is about and the eating that was supposed to be an altar and now it's by a person, or a person and now it's by the altar. It's okay. Either direction, it's still going to be pigul. So my time, why do we say that? It's because the Torah chose to use a language of achila with respect to burning. The Rabbanan, well, one second, why don't the rabbis agree to this logic? Meaning, once you've already said this, now it makes sense to have the rabbis agree this. It seems like a very logical argument that Rabbi Eliezer has. Haida abkinu rachmana b'lashon achila. No, the fact that we chose a language of achila, and now we turn to Yud Zayin Amabet, the lo shna ki mechashe b'lashon achila lemizbeach. It shows that it doesn't make a difference which one you're thinking about. Are you whether you're thinking about a person or the altar? V'lo shna ki mechashe b'lashon haktara lemizbeach. And it doesn't matter what language you're using. Meaning, I can think about achilas mizbeach and I can think about haktaras mizbeach. Either way, that's what it's telling us. The fact that it uses achila tells us that you don't have to use the language of burning with respect to it. You could even use the language of eating. And Rashi gives us an example. Take a look, third line down in Zion Mabet, b'lashon achilu l'mizbeach. Kagon, if someone were to say, Hareini kometz, I'm taking this kometz, almanas lahachil kometz lemizbeach lemachar, in order to feed this kometz to the altar tomorrow. Right now, the kometz is going to be burned on the altar, but it's not going to be fed to the altar. But that is going to be considered pigul because the language of eating is a language of burning. And so as a result, this would be a pigul thought, and it would be totally pigul. So that's one possibility. Inami, this is another possibility of what the rabbis would learn from this and not choose to learn Rabbi Eliezer's lesson of the fact that instead of, that if you think about not just eating what's supposed to be eaten and burning what's supposed to be burned, but rather thinking about eating what's supposed to be burned and burning what's supposed to be eaten. So the rabbis would say, ma'achilas b'kazayas, afaktar b'kazayas. How do I know how much needs to be burned? I would tell you that because the Torah uses the language of achila, and achila is always a kazayas amount, that's the minimum amount. So too, when we talk about burning, we're talking about a minimum amount of a kazayas. Ula olam achila da'orcha mashma, and we're talking about but when we're talking about eating, we mean that you've got to be thinking about the person who's supposed to eat the thing that is going to be eaten, not something that is supposed to be burned and not burning something that is supposed to be eaten. For Rebbe Eliezer. So, all right, one second though, how does Rebbe Eliezer learn these two concepts that the rabbis just learned? So, after all, he has one drasha of learning from the double language. And so, as a result, shouldn't that double language teach only one thing and not these other alternative things that the rabbis learned? So, im kain, if we wanted to teach just one thing, lichtov rachmana im heachol heachel, then should use the exact same written word twice and refer to a double eating in that manner. Inami im yeachel yeachol yeachel. Again, a double kind of eating. My heachol yeachel. Why does it specifically change from one form of eating, from one language or written word of eating to a different one? Shamat minatarti. We can learn two things. So not only can we learn what the rabbi said, but I'm still right that if you think about the wrong thing, it's also going to be puzzle. So in second, Amar Rabbi Zera Rav Asi, time of the Rabbi Eliezer Mishum Hachihu. If that's the reason of Rabbi Eliezer, Karis Nami L'chayev. Well, then not only should he be subject to saying that the sacrifice is prohibited, is pasul, is invalid. It should go so far as to say that it's subject to kares. We just gave a biblical source to suggest that thinking about eating something that is supposed to be burned and burning something that is supposed to be eaten is actually part of the prohibition of pigul in the Torah, and so as a result, it should actually be pigul. And yet you, and if you tell me, yeah, in fact, it is pigul, but you're the one who said, you're the one who says that Rabbi Eliezer agrees that it's not the punishment is not kares. So Amr Lay, so Rav Asi responds, Tanoihi aliba de Rabbi Eliezer. You know what? It's actually a machlokas tanoim within Rebbe Eliezer. Ikalaman de Amar psula del Raisa. There's an opinion that says that Rebbe Eliezer would say that it's puzzle minat Torah and therefore is going to be subject to kares. The Ikalaman de Amar psula de Rabbanan. And there's another view that says that it's going to be only prohibited rabbinically. And so, as a result, Titania. And how do I know that this is the case? So, here is a brisa. And so, this brisa is going to be our evidence. So, Hashochet as
Well, you want to say that but if there's a rabbinic law, the Rabbanan, don't they have the Rabbanan have the authority of the Torah? Don't we say that often? So, even according to the Rabbanan, couldn't it be correct?
No. The rabbis cannot. Because kare is a punishment from Shemayim, it's not. They can't. They can say that something is going to be subject to lashes, but even when they do that, they are going to It's going to be clear that the lashes are rabbinic lashes. Meaning, you're absolutely right that they call the Gaza Rabbanan Gazru, Kain Deoraisa. They do it just like the Torah, but that doesn't mean that they're incorporating the penalty of the Torah. It means that the procedures and rules that are associated with it are as if they were given by the Torah. They would be consistent with the procedures of the Torah, not that it's going to be subject to the same penalty as in the Torah. That's what that line means. And so if the rabbis say that something is prohibited, it is not going to be subject to the death penalty or to kares the way a Torah prohibition can be. But how do we know that there are these two opinions in Rebbe Eliezer? So now we have a brisa. And this brisa, again, Rav Asi is explaining this brisa, and he's going to give us one explanation. We're going to see that the Gemara will respond with a different explanation and say that this is not necessarily a proof to Rav Asi, God willing, tomorrow. So, Titania, we have this brisa. Hashochet es hazevach lishtos midamo lemachar. You slaughter a sacrifice with the intention to drink the blood the next day. Now, we're talking certainly about, let's assume that we're talking about a sacrifice that is only supposed to be eaten today. And so tomorrow is the wrong time. But of course, what we're thinking about consuming tomorrow is something that isn't supposed to be consumed, right? This is blood, it's usher to eat, usher to consume. Or if instead of thinking about having the blood the next day, you're thinking to burn some of the meat that is supposed to be eaten the next day. Or, which again, that meat isn't supposed to be eaten, not burned on the Mizbeach. So we're trying to, again, all of these examples are going to be either eating something that's not supposed to be eaten or burning something that's not supposed to be burned. Or eating some of the sacrificial parts tomorrow. So those, of course, are supposed to be burned on the altar. Kasher, it is kosher. Rabbi Eliezer posel, and Rabbi Eliezer says it's not kosher. It is not kosher. It is invalid. Now, note this is totally consistent with our Mishnah at the moment. Okay, completely consistent with our Mishnah, and you cannot tell what kind of invalidity we are talking about for Rabbi Eliezer. But now we have an additional component. If it's supposed to leave over some of the blood until the next day. So again, not consuming the blood, that was case number 1, but now case number 4, we have you're supposed to leave over some of the blood until the next day, which of course is included in case number 1. Rabbi Yehuda posel. Rabbi Yehuda says it's invalid. Rabbi Elazar. Rabbi Elazar. Again, this is continuing the brisa, so this is the Tana Rabbi Elazar. Af bezo Rabbi Eliezer posel v'chachamim machshir. So even here we have the machlokas, meaning with the blood being just left over for the next day. That is also the machlokas between Rabbi Eliezer and the chachamim. The Rabbi Eliezer says it's invalid. The Chachamim say it's kosher, it's valid. So now that we have that brisa, let's clarify. Rabbi Yehuda aliba deman. Who is Rabbi Yehuda? What opinion is Rabbi Yehuda saying? Meaning, is Rabbi Yehuda saying that the rabbis would say that it's invalid? Or is Rabbi Yehuda saying that everybody would say that it's invalid? Who is he going like when he says, is it like Rabbi Eliezer? Is it like the rabbis? So Rabbi Yehuda aliba deman. Who is Rabbi Yehuda stating his opinion like? Ilema aliba de rabbanan. You want to tell me that it's the rabbis? That cannot be. Hashta umahasam de kamachashe b'lashon achila machsharei rabbanan. The rabbis say that if I think I'm going to eat the blood the next day, that it's kosher, completely kosher. Well, what do I have to do in order to eat the blood the next day? I have to leave over the blood for the next day. So, of course, if it's kosher when I plan to eat the blood, it should certainly be kosher if I'm just leaving it over. So, as a result, it can't be. So, hacha lo kol shekain, here it certainly should be kosher according to Rabbi Yehuda. So, Rabbi Yehuda can't be like the rabbis. Ella aliba de Rabbi Eliezer. It must be that he's saying like Rabbi Eliezer. And what is he saying? He's saying that Rabbi Eliezer would agree that even in this fourth case, the case of leaving over the blood, that it's prohibited. And so as a result, and whereas the rabbis would say it's not prohibited. But now, Amar Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Elazar, Afbezo, Rabbi Eliezer, Posel, V'chachamim Machshirim. But now we have the exact same viewpoint effectively expressed by Rabbi Elazar. Because Rabbi Elazar is saying that, you know what, in this blood case, the rabbis and Rabbi Eliezer disagree. Well, Rabbi Elazar, Hainu Rabbi Yehuda. What's the difference between the two of them? So here's what the difference is according to Rav Asi. Rav Asi says, here's what I think the difference is. Ella lav kares ikabanaihu. The difference is the penalty of kares. The Rabbi Yehuda savar la haniach psula ba'alma. He says that when it comes to the last case of the blood, then it is only just puzzle. But Bahanach, when it comes to the first three cases of drinking the blood or burning the meat or eating the emurim, he would say that all three of those are subject to kares if the person were to eat the offering that would the afterwards, because it's actually pigul according to the Torah. For us, Rabbi Elazar Lamemar, and then Rabbi Elazar says, no, idi v'idi puzzle ve'ein bo kares. Both situations are situations where it's puzzle and there's no kares, according to Rabbi Eliezer. And so as a result, we have a machlokus between Rabbi Yehuda on the one hand, who says that it's subject to kares when you have in mind to eat something that's not supposed to be eaten or burn something that's not supposed to be burned. And you have Rabbi Elazar, on the other hand, who says that according to Rabbi Eliezer, no, it's just rabbinically prohibited. Now, what is the rabbinic prohibition? Let's take a look at
But isn't it a mefarash b'Torah et adam lo tochelu, that they can't you can't consume the blood?
remember that the thought is only, I'm thinking about eating it. He didn't go ahead and then eat it. He didn't go ahead and do the thing. He just, while he was offering the sacrifice, thought he was going to, said, I'm doing this with the thought and intention to eat the blood tomorrow. He didn't actually eat the blood tomorrow. But what he did eat was the korban tomorrow. Now, if that korban became pigul as a result of this thought, now he's subject to kares, not for eating the blood, but for eating the korban, which was pigul. That's the situation that we're talking about.
But he was thinking about the blood. So
yes, he thought about the blood, but he didn't necessarily consume the blood.
But didn't we have a discussion even earlier today? If you think about one thing, like with the Lavona and the Komich, you think about one, but not the other. There's an opinion that it's not pigul, right? So here, if he's
Right,
thinking about the blood and he eats the meat, what the blood and the meat are not the same thing.
that is true. But here's the difference. What is it? Now the blood is not supposed to even go on a car on the altar. So it's well, no, it does go on the altar. So it gets applied to the altar. So what is it that enables the blood to be applied to the altar? One of the steps that is the only step in this at this point in time that makes it possible to put the blood on the altar. It is the shechting of the animal. So when you slaughter that animal, there is no other matir. So it is the only matir. And so as a result, this is not a case of chatzi matir like when you burn the komets and think about eating the shirayim, when you aren't also burning the lavona, right? So there you need to burn both the komets and the lavona. And so that's why burning the komets is a chatzi matir. But here, shechting the animal is the whole matir. So as a result, it's not comparable to that earlier case. And when and the thing that you're thinking about, the blood, is something that does have an aspect of being permitted, because the only reason that you can put the blood on the altar is because you've shechted the animal. So as a result, that's and again, if you had thought, oh, I'm going to apply the blood tomorrow as opposed to consume the blood tomorrow, everybody would agree that it's pigul, right? Because you're doing what you're supposed to be doing with the blood. You're just doing it at the wrong time.
Right.
And so, but here, this is the machlokas, is about when you're thinking about doing something that's not supposed to be done. You're thinking about eating something that's not supposed to be eaten, or burning something that's not supposed to be burned, or putting on the altar something that's not supposed to be put on the altar. So that's what's going on here. And so again, we now have, according to
that it's, but also it's an isra me'alav, and it's not even so. It's hard to even conceptualize it.
It's important to remember that the thought that you have that is making something pigul is not, we do not assume that you do the action at the wrong, that you then do that action that you were intending to do. That is not necessary. That is not a necessary element of the pigul problem. As soon as you have the thought, the sacrifice becomes pigul, And even if you do everything else correct in the correct time, etc., if you then eat that sacrifice, then you're subject to kares. So you never ate the blood. You never ate the blood, even though you had that intention. In the case that we're thinking about, yes, you had the intention to eat the blood tomorrow, but did you eat the blood? No. What
So
you
they
did
wouldn't.
do is you ate the sacrifice.
Oh, so they ate the sacrifice. So then,
Correct.
oh,
Correct.
so then
And
that, so
that's
then
what's going to subject you to
it's a
kares. That's
pigel.
what we're saying.
All right.
That if you were to, okay, and so we will pick up and reject. So has Rav Asi proven that there is a debate among Tanaim whether Rabbi Eliezer says that karet applies in our Mishnah? It certainly looks like it at the moment. He gave a nice read to this brisa, but we're going to see, God willing, tomorrow that there is another read that can be given to that brisa. And so stay tuned for tomorrow's daf to find out how we reject Rav Asi's proof.
Even though that I would think there'd be another penalty associated with even or certainly eating the blood or
Well, certainly, absolutely, there would be a separate penalty for if the person were to actually consume the blood. I mean, this is one of the few situations. It's actually interesting, right? Because even in this situation, there isn't actually a penalty for the thought. Remember, the kares only comes when you eat the sacrifice that is subject to pigul. You do not get kares for the thought alone. The thought alone creates the pigul. But
right.
the penalty of kares is actually only subject to is only if you eat the sacrifice. So
So suppose he ate the blood. What is the penalty then? Is that
I,
is that, is that
I
something in addition to
I
karet? I
think
mean,
that I think that consuming the blood is subject to kares, and it would be subject to if he got warning, he would be subject to lashes as well. So yeah, I believe I believe that's the case. I'm not. I don't remember 100%, but I'm pretty sure that that's the penalty for consuming blood. So yeah, you would be subject. Yeah. So for example, so if in fact he did what he intended to do, but he realized that the carbon was um, uh, uh, the korban was pigul, and he burned the entire korban, but then he goes ahead and he eats blood, he's going to be subject to the penalty for eating blood, not the penalty for pigul. So, all right.
uh, right. So what is the penalty for eating the blood? Is that karet as well, or is it
I
something
think so.
else?
I think so. I think so. I think it's kares and lashes.
Both?
I think so. Yes, I think so.
Isn't isn't
I'll double check and have that
aren't
for you tomorrow.
lashes given when like generally b'shogeg when you can't give right? Isn't that
No, 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 no.
okay?
Lashes and kares often go together.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
That's the penalty in this world for situations that are subject to kares is lashes.
Right.
That's what the rabbis do.
But
So
we do
not
make a
and not
distinction
it's not
between
rabbinic, it's the biblical usually.
but
But
we
I'll
make it
double check that.
but we
I'm
make it
like I
the
said, I'm pretty
distinction
sure, but I'll double check.
we
All
make a
right.
distinction between the Mazid and Shogeg, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Certainly, there's a difference between Mazid and Shogeg. And Mazid and Shogeg would be in both, whether it's lashes or kares. If it's Shogeg, you would just bring a chatas.
Right, right.
All right. Look forward to continuing our learning tomorrow. God willing, I'll have a double check that and have that answer for you tomorrow.